Hello, welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are so pleased to have you here with us tonight. I am Cece Shatz. I'm the Doyenne of Relationship Building, and you're listening to the Going Solo with Cece show. But let's do our homework before we start because we get so busy and I get so excited because we have a great guest on tonight. But you know where you can reach me, and if you don't, I'm going to tell you. It's at our website, which is goingsolomedia.com. We have all of our shows on there, all of our wonderful hosts and guests on there that you can see all of their information. It's really an awesome place in order to really get some really factful information for you. Then the other site we have is Going Solo Network, which has everything on there, including all of the wonderful websites that we have. So we want you to check it out and join us on some of our wonderful singles excursions that we do. Now, let's get on to business. Our email is goingsoloNetwork@gmail.com. I love to hear from you. And if you want to send me an email, it just makes my day when I open up my email and I see that some of our fans and some of our listeners are actually sending me messages and sharing with their lives, their journeys, and what they would like to hear. And so please do, because we do read those. I read them personally, each and every one of them. So thank you very much for emailing us. And I'll put that up here so you guys have it again. goingsoloNetwork@gmail.com. And then also our radio and TV site is goingsolomedia.com. And we have a brand new group, Going Solo Singles Community. So definitely goingsoloCommunity.com. So definitely check that out. But let's move on because we got a lot going on here tonight. We've got a wonderful topic and a wonderful guest. So we're going to bring her forward here. Hello, Alisa. How are you?
I'm good, Cece. Nice to see you again.
Oh, it's great to see you. Well, I wanted to have you on because I wanted to talk a little bit more about how do you manage conflicts with mediation. And now Alisa Kharis is it Kharis? Am I pronouncing it?
Kharis. Alisa Kharis.
Alisa Kharis. And you're the founder and the mediator of Blend Mediation. You also have a great podcast out there, which is called Breakthrough Today. And you talk about various different topics. And you have great guests and stuff. And it's a really cool podcast. So those out there listening, make sure you check it out because it's something I think that you would enjoy as much as I do. So let's talk a little bit about your journey as to mediation and really being, I believe you're a coach. Am I correct?
I am not a coach, but and I'm not the only mediator. I have sort of a professional network that I've created. So part of that network is with divorce and life coaches, as well as paralegals, attorneys. There's affiliations with attorneys and other mediators.
Okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up. Well, tell us a little bit, number one, about your journey of being into mediation, and then explain to the audience what a mediator is, because sometimes I think they get confused as to a mediator and mediation and meditation and, all of those things, which is totally not the same. So let's talk a little bit about your journey as to why you chose to be a mediator.
Okay. Yeah. So I was kind of one of those weird kids that knew at 7 what I wanted to do with my life. And then I wanted to be a lawyer. So I don't know if that's because the social messaging was, this is one of the tracks you go on. But so I did that. And then I realized when I graduated from law school, I don't actually know what I want to do. But I ended up in family law, which really wasn't that big of a stretch because my mom was a therapist. So it was kind of a natural fit. And then I practiced general law, but family law cases kept coming and I kept growing. And after about 16 years of doing a lot of motions practice and litigation, I was like, this is a lot of burnout. And I ended up transitioning, going home, actually, a series of unfortunate events, as that Jim Carrey movie says, occurred, which actually turned out to be quite a blessing. I went and did caregiving for my parents, not that I was anticipating that. And it gave me a whole different skill set. It required a lot more compassion, a lot more listening, and sort of spending time with people at the end of their lives. I was able to kind of get a full life spectrum on what people really need. And I thought, I've been doing mediation when I was practicing, But I think I should do it full time now, right? Because COVID happened. I had to pivot. I had already started this mediation company, but I hadn't grown it yet. And what I discovered was that people really need to be listened to. They need to listen and they need to be heard, right? And mediation, to answer your question, is really about facilitating communication between people, which can literally happen at any stage in life with any sort of conflict. I mean, most of my clients come to me because they're going to go through a divorce or separation, or they have parenting issues or whatever, family law issues, basically. But I also have clients that, somebody's executing an estate. So like somebody's died and there's beneficiaries that are having conflict. So you can use it in trust and estates. You can use it in human resources. You can use it in workplace conflict. You can use it in international conflicts, right? It's literally anywhere. And the reason that I love it is because Americans, well, and actually, yeah, mostly Americans, but we don't really use mediation necessarily like other cultures. There's a huge Jewish tradition of using mediation before any sort of litigation, right? So the idea being that you make peace with your neighbors before they take you to court, right?
Right.
And I like that. And there are tribes where that's part of their normal process, is there's a mediator to resolve conflicts that happen between people in the tribe. So I really resonated to that. And I would like, my ambitious idea is to sort of be audacious enough to do mediation with inspiration, which to me means informing people and empowering them to save their relationships through mediation, and facilitating, enhancing communication in order to do that. So that's
wonderful.
That's
that is wonderful. Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you on. I know that you had been on Carl Roberts' show, which is a great show. And, when I heard you speak, I realized that there's so much more that we can do with mediation and create an awareness of, being able to sit down at a table, right? Remember the old days when you had a trouble or whatever, you sit down at the kitchen table, you get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and you talk, right? Mm-hmm. And you try, and usually it's your mom or somebody like that, that's the middle person that kind of, allows everyone to have their point of view across and, and is constructive on trying to solve whatever the situation is. And when you were speaking with Carl, I thought, ding, we need to use this more in our lives to settle some conflicts that we're having, that, we can move forward in a very positive way. So mediation, I feel, can be used in a very positive and have very positive results to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and the difference between there's a blog I wrote on that very topic that you just touched on, which is using friends and family for mediation. It's kind of like using friends and family for advice when you're going through a divorce, right? Everybody has, they love you and they care about you and they want to give you their 2 cents, but it's not necessarily the right information for you. A professional mediator is not attached to any of your issues, right? And they don't know anything about you. So it's only about facilitating and analyzing, honoring the communication that's happening. And that makes it really safe for people, because while it may be difficult to tell your mom a particular story at the kitchen table that you want mediated, it's not as hard to tell a mediator. And part of the reason is because it's very confidential, right? I mean, when we're done with the case, we're done with the case, and none of that information gets out of the room. So, I think it's a great tool, and it's so easy to use, and it's, compared to litigation, extremely affordable. So yeah, that's my passion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I can see, and I agree with you. I just use like the mom as the example, and the idea that we can solve problems by communication and solve problems by sitting together and trying to solve whatever differences that we have by listening and communicating. And we're lacking that more and more, I think, in today's world. But here's the thing, Alicia, how do we get there? How do we get to, when we have a problem that we feel like we could use a mediator, how do we get to that process that we don't go through like the courts and we don't go through the whole thing? I mean, are we able to just call you and make an appointment and work it out? Is that the process?
Yeah. I mean, so the short answer to your question is, yeah, you go to blendmediation.com and you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation and then schedule a mediation from there, or you can just call me. I mean, the number is 888-301-8311.
Here, let me put your information up so they have it. So it's blendmediation.com.
No, it's 888-301-8311.
Oh, we have the wrong phone number.
That's okay.
Okay, let me fix that. So it's 301. I do apologize for this.
That's okay. Like we said before the beginning of the show, this is one of those days.
I know. It's one of those days. And what's the last four? 88. What is it?
301-8311.
8311. Yeah, it is one of those days. It's one of those days.
That's the nice thing about being human. You can make mistakes and still keep going.
Yeah.
So anyway, the short answer is yes, you can just contact us directly. And we have mediations that last anywhere from an hour to, all day to several days. So it kind of depends on your issue. The longer answer to that question is that you have to have the awareness that it's a tool available to you. So that's part of my mission, and part of the mission of the people that are in my network is to increase that awareness. And then just be willing to use it, right? To say, I don't, it's not a crime to say, I have this issue and I can't resolve this myself with this other person. It's just not happening, right? So we need somebody to step in and pick up the phone, call us, and we'll help you.
Right. Okay. So let's say we give you a call and we're going to go into the office and we've got this particular issue, whether it be a legal issue or a relationship issue or whatever the issue might be. Do we both sit together at the table and hash it out, or do you talk to one person at a time and then bring the matter together, or how does that work?
So the process is really, here's one of the great things about mediation. It's controlled by the parties, right? So as opposed to going to court where somebody is going to give you a decision and you have to live with what they decide, mediation, not only the process, but the agreements that are made are controlled by the parties. So my personal preference, I do virtual mediation, so I can service clients basically anywhere there's an internet connection. And then I do in-person mediation, but you have to book a little bit further out for that. And my personal preference is to do basically single room mediation where everybody's in the same room and they stay there to the extent it's conducive to resolving the issue. There's another kind of mediation called shuttle mediation where the mediator kind of goes back and forth from one room to the other. That's fairly common in family law. Not my preference, just because I think you create better communication when everybody's in the room. And honestly, the characteristic of it being virtual, I find allows people to feel safer because they're in their own physical space, that they aren't going to have to interact with the other parties, especially if they're in, high levels of conflict. And they feel more free to openly communicate. And then there's the option for private communication with the mediator. And because the mediator is a neutral party, they're going to, if they give private communication with one party, they're going to give equal amount of time and private communication with the other party. So there's a variety of tools that we can use to help the communication happen. And the ultimate goal being obviously to reach agreements, right? And document them.
So do you put like a timer on the individuals when they're talking? Like, do they, like one party talks for 3 minutes and the other party talks for 3 minutes, or how do you do it if they're in conflict?
I don't use a time. Well, we set guidelines up front, right, about rules of communication, like healthy listening skills and healthy communication skills. Obviously, like, don't character assassinate, don't call somebody else name, all the stuff you learn in kindergarten. But really, when you're in high levels of conflict, you forget it, right? Especially if you have an ingrained relationship with this person where you're used to communicating that way, right? Mm-hmm. So there's ground rules that are set ahead of time. And then I usually tell each party gets there's no designated amount of time, but they give me their perspective on the issues. And then usually it starts a dialogue, right? So, and most of the times it's respectful, and lots of intense levels of conflict can be resolved within a few hours, as opposed to months in litigation, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I try not to time people. I try and go with the flow as long as the communication is helping us get to resolution.
That's nice to know. Yeah, because I'm hoping that the two parties, if they're in mediation, they're looking for some sort of positive outcome. They're, the awareness, like you said, and they are looking for a positive outcome. So, they're willing to communicate, which is what mediation is truly all about. And I think this is so important to create more of awareness of this tool that people can use for various different things, whether it be a family law type of situation, a divorce or a separation, or even using it for when as your children are growing older, like let's say you got divorced when they're younger and things have changed, things are starting to happen, but there's conflict coming, there's conflict that's happening, or maybe the child wants to live with the other parent, or there's things that's happening. There's a movement that's happening within the environment, and maybe a separation, plan or the parenting plan isn't quite working out the way it was originally designed. Yeah. And mediation is a perfect place to go in and talk to, like a neutral party, and try to sort out the reasons why you need to make whatever the necessary changes are, that you're just not being a thorn in somebody else's side, right?
Right.
You're actually have concrete, viable reasons why you maybe want a change in the situation.
Yeah, so here's some scenarios. So you have an aging parent who you're considering maybe moving into a nursing home. Part of the family wants it, part of the family doesn't want it, right? And the parent may or may not want it, and depending on levels of competency, that's an issue for mediation, right? Those are serious, intense issues that are going to affect everybody. Then there's other issues that aren't so serious and intense. Let's say I have an ex-husband, we have a child together, and he doesn't want the kid to go to soccer, learn how to play soccer, and I do, right? Those are smaller issues. They'll take less time to mediate probably, but I watched when I was practicing law, people get into intense fights and go through to court, and argue motions on their behalf to argue about why somebody should be able to go, allow the child to go to soccer practice or not. Mm-hmm. So those kinds of little small things, all the way up to really serious things, can all be resolved through mediation. Here's another example. There's, usually in workplace settings, if employees are at odds, there's some sort of human resources person or mediator, and they'll send them to mediation. But what if people said, I don't really want this to affect our workplace, right? We are having an issue, and I don't want anybody to know we're having an issue. So you can call up a private mediator to resolve the issue, and now it doesn't become part of the culture, the workplace culture, right? So and so don't get along, and everybody knows that, right? Nobody has to know that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a great tool.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think it's because our lives just keep changing. It just keeps evolving. So there's things that just keep happening. And so it's great to be able to have someone like yourself that you can call, sit down, talk about it, and try to get it worked out without it being something that's overheated, escalating into something far bigger than what it really should be, and costing a whole lot of money and a lot of hurt feelings,
And here's another setting. So those settings that I just described are places where people are actually in conflict. You can also use mediation when you're not in conflict, but basically as a preparatory tool to avoid conflict. So let's say you're going to get married to somebody, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're in the process of dating, and you're like, I think we have a long, probability for a long-term relationship, but let's set some ground rules about money here, right? But it's not a conversation that you're comfortable having together, right? Or that you're, for whatever reason. I'm thinking about like pre-cantor classes in the Catholic Church, right? They put young people through these classes to kind of figure out how well equipped they are to actually be married, and you can do some of those same issues in mediation, right? Because it's all about putting the issue out on the table and facilitating conversation around it, getting understanding and agreement, coming away with agreements.
Yeah, that's great. I never even thought about that. That would be a great tool, because it is a difficult, finances are always a difficult thing in which to discuss. And it's probably one of the biggest kickers for divorce. You know what I mean? So yeah, so it's great to be able to sit down and talk about it, because a lot of times, if we had a better understanding of how the other party feels about something, we might be able to resolve some of the issues at hand before it escalates. So we don't always understand, that if you're spending money in this particular place, why are you doing it? Or if you're spending your time in this particular way, why are you doing it? And that's, and I just thought about too, like a lot of times in relationships, the parties grow apart because, one party, usually the husband is busy working and he's spending a lot of hours away from home, and they kind of grow apart from each other. So even mediation with that respect is talking about how can we come together as a family and start getting many people go to therapists for this, but they can do mediation. And how can we, arrange our schedule better so that we're actually with our partner more? So there's a lot of things you could use mediation for.
Yeah, and I like to clarify, because therapists definitely have a role, as do a whole bunch of other professionals.
But absolutely.
Therapy is largely about looking backwards, right?
Right.
Seeing where things went off the rails. Mediation is about the present and then planning for the future.
Right.
And yeah, I think it can be super empowering for people. Yeah. That's part of the reason I do this, is that especially when I like to help people avoid crisis, and I've seen a lot of it, obviously, with my profession, but especially when people are in crisis, they kind of are usually at the point where they're so distraught from the way that they've been living their lives that they surrender their power to whatever professional they hire, right? And then they get to the end of it and they're divorced or they're separated or whatever this issue was. And they feel awful and they have no plan, right? And I think that's largely because people are not empowered in the process, right? I mean, you're in crisis, but that doesn't mean that if you choose the right system, if you choose the right professionals to support you, you should be able to basically hold yourself together and then logically plot the next moves forward so that when you come out of it, you're as good, if not better, than you were, when you started it.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think spot on. And I like the idea that it's, and again, therapists, I do agree with you that it's, they do look at your past. They try to, work out some of the situations that are there. And the mediator is looking for the positive moving forward. Okay, we're here. This is where we're at. This is what the discussion is. Let's try to work out the details so that we can move forward in a very positive way. I totally agree with you. It just opened my eyes to so many different aspects that you could use mediation for, whether it be something large or even something small that you have difficulty discussing. That you could use mediation to be able to just try to sort out some of those situations so they don't escalate to something large. So, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I could have salvaged a few of my own relationships that way if I would have used mediation back then.
Yeah.
And, that's it brings up a good point, which is that even mediators and people who are professionals at doing this kind of stuff, that doesn't mean we can necessarily solve our own problems, because it's way harder to do when you're in the middle of the problem yourself, right?
Right, absolutely. And like you pointed out, before, your family is really not the best place, because you want a neutral, someone that kind of can understand the facts that are going on, during the conversation, what's true and what is believed to be true. And so those things are very, very important. We're going to have to take a quick break because our time has kind of gone by kind of quickly. So what we're going to do is, when we come back, maybe talking about preparation of what we need to do as an individual if we find that we're in some sort of conflict, that we do need a mediator. And I get to ask this all the time in my divorce group. Well, what do I need to do to prepare myself to be able to go in? And they look at it as almost like they're ready to fight a battle. And that's totally not what mediation is. So maybe we could open their eyes as to how to create the mindset where they're looking at it in a positive way so they can get a positive outcome.
Okay.
Let's talk about that. I think that would be important. So y'all, you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This is the Going Solo with Cece show. We're going to be right back. So I want you guys to hang tight, go grab a glass of water, cup of tea, and let's just listen to our broadcast, our video here, and we'll be right back. Well, hello, welcome back to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are listening to the Going Solo with Cece show. I am Cece Shatz, the Doyenne of relationship building. We have a wonderful guest here on tonight. We're talking about manage conflict with mediation. We have Alisa Kharis. Did I pronounce it right? Kharis?
Yep.
And she's the founder and mediator of blendmediation.com. She has a great podcast called Breakthrough Today. And we're going to be hearing, I think, more and more of Alisa as she helps to guide us in mediation and opening our eyes to other ways in which we can solve conflict. And so, the first part of the show, Alisa, we talked about mediation, what it is, how we can use it in different forms. But now this part of the show, I'd like to talk about the preparation of mediation, because like anything that we want to work and be successful at, we have to do a little bit of planning for. So how can one, if they're in a conflict, a high conflict, maybe divorce or high conflict, maybe even an estate case or something like that, or even putting your parents, like you said, into a nursing home or something like that, and the family members are, upset about, how can we prepare ourselves to, get into the mediation part of it and try to, organize ourselves to be able to make this discussion in a proper way?
Okay. So, first, I'll say that it depends on what kind of issue you're dealing with, right? If it's an issue that is traditionally litigated like divorce, then you should be aware that there are a variety of different ways to do it, right? There's this DIY way, which is do it yourself. That can be pretty intimidating and confusing because every court has its own process, and people get very overwhelmed when they're already overwhelmed to begin with. But it's an option, and some people do it successfully. You can also surround yourself with supportive professionals like a divorce coach. I'm going to tackle the divorce part first, and then we'll get to the other issues. So that person will support you emotionally just to help you keep you grounded, and then and they will also help you actually prepare, like financial documents and or walk through the process of, well, you're preparing your financial information, etc. The things you need to consider, obviously, are in divorce cases are what your parenting schedule is going to look like, what your finances are, your assets, your liabilities, where your current money is going, all your budgeting, how you want to communicate with the other parent going forward, etc. The other way to do this is through mediation, obviously, and a mediator is going to need all of that information, just like a litigator would, or you would yourself if you're doing it DIY. Mm-hmm. So I guess to back up, the first answer to your question is to get organized yourself, right? Understand everything that you have that is going to need to be divided now between the parties, or even in an estate case, divided maybe between several parties. Mm-hmm. Once the logistics of all that are organized, then you choose your medium: DIY, coaching, mediation, litigation, and then you can proceed. I would say to people, if you are not in a litigious situation, the first step to mediation is to ask the other party, are you aware of mediation, that we can use this, and would you be willing to try it? And if you don't feel that you can do that yourself, at least through my office, I have people contact me sometimes and they say, I have this issue and I want to mediate it. And the first question is generally, does the other party agree to mediation? Because you have to have two or more willing parties, right? And generally we have a letter that you can copy, basically send out, inviting the other party to mediation. So that's a good first step. Then once you have permission, then you're halfway there. You have two people who are going to show up to the same table to discuss issues.
Yeah, that's good advice, because you really do have to be on the same page. And it's nice. I never thought about the fact that if you're in a conflict situation, maybe it's not easy for you to ask, or they'll think there's a motive or something if you're asking, hey, let's try to a mediator, or let's try to do this. But if you do it in a form of a letter or something like that, maybe that would be a little bit easier. Give them time to think so they don't have to immediately respond, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. And then let me say, there are some, I choose this number, but I don't have any official statistics, but I would say that 90% of people who go through conflict resolution, whether it's litigation or some other method, want to resolve, right? They don't want to go to court and go to battle. They don't want to do battle with each other. They just want to get out of the conflict. But there are a number of other cases that people need to do battle. And in that case, they need to go to a litigator and, wear out that process. But it's not for most people, and it's not in my opinion, for families. because families deal with very intimate relationships that they're going to have for the rest of their lives, hopefully, right? So one of the things that mediation is able to do is to save relationships, empower people to salvage relationships that might otherwise be torn apart or broken irreconcilably through a litigation process. So I encourage people to consider that when they're doing family mediation.
Mm-hmm. And here's another thing I was thinking was that when you're getting a divorce or when you're doing a lot of different situations where we could use mediation, there could be segments of it where we could use mediation. Maybe the other parts, you maybe have to go to court, but some of them you might be able to work out some of those things and then go to court on the other things that you can't. But here's what I was thinking is that if you start, then you begin the process. And when you take that step and you start, with the communication in a positive way, you have the mediator such as yourself working it through, going it through, I think you might be surprised that you could solve a great deal and not have to go through litigation, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the irony, right? And you're speaking my language now, Cece, because the irony is that if you go through a litigated divorce, at some point before you end up in a trial, right, if you haven't resolved the issues, you're going to be forced to go to mediation. So doesn't it make a lot more sense to start at mediation and, like you said, work out whatever issues you can, or at least begin the dialogue where you're able to talk to the other party? The problem with high conflict litigation is that the system is designed. It's not the lawyer's fault. It's just the way the system is designed. The lawyers have to protect their clients from themselves often, right? So the very first thing, if you've ever talked to a lawyer, they tell you is don't talk to the other party, right? Don't say anything if it's, just don't say anything. Or if you do say things, say it like this, right? So this relationship that you've just had with this person who you loved, and even if it's now coming to an end, that you have been completely intimate with, you now can't talk to. It's very unnatural, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. So if you start with mediation, you overcome that obstacle because you're going to continue talking to each other. And you might just be able to find yourselves in a position where the communication improves, which, if you have children, is incredibly important because you are modeling for your children how to communicate and resolve conflict.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I can see that there's a wonderful place for mediation. And I know here in our state, I'm in Florida, it is mandated. You do have to go to mediation, and before you go to court or whatever, they're hoping that you will be able to get some of the issues resolved, at least majority of them resolved, before you actually have to go into the court. But
do they do that at the beginning in Florida? I don't think.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do it at the beginning, like you file and everything. But then before you actually go in for the court hearing, they'll have you go to mediation. You do mediation.
Right.
To see if you can try to work it out before taking up the court's time and doing, a litigated court hearing. Here you can pick your mediator, or a court appointed one would be given. So you could actually pick your own mediator. So, thinking about that, it's like, well, that's a given, because wouldn't you want someone that you feel, both parties feel, they would be comfortable with, rather than someone that was just court appointed? Not that they're bad. I'm not saying they're bad, but you have a chance to research them and find out, what they're like. And everybody has a different style about them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a good mediator should be just neutral and facilitate, so their style shouldn't really get into the process that much, but it is kind of difficult to make that happen.
It is. Yeah. I think that, because personalities, like, for instance, if you had someone, a male that was real dominant or whatever, and you have a female, litigator, he might be a little softer, he might not be so aggressive, he doesn't feel like he's got to go in with guns blazing, as he's going through this. So he could be a little softer. So personalities might play into it just a bit, but not the facts. I mean, the facts are the facts, and the results, hopefully people will be open-minded, be able to do the discussions and the communication and all that jazz that you.
Yeah. I mean, you should definitely interview your professional who in whatever arena they're in. But yeah, comfortability is a big deal. And what you're looking for in a mediator is somebody who's going to be respectful, who has very good listening skills. Not that you would know this until you get into mediation, but somebody who listens even to body language. Mm-hmm. And someone who you feel you could, basically unload on, right? And it's not in a bad way, but basically confide in, right? Because that's sort of the what creates the breakthroughs in mediation, is when people get to the underpinnings of not how they've been dealing with issues, but what is really causing them to react in certain ways, right? Like, for example, in divorce, often people will brutalize each other financially over what is really an emotional issue, right? Being betrayed or being abandoned or whatever it is, right? For that person, it might have something to do, it has nothing to do with the relationship, maybe something that happened, earlier in their lives. Right. But the way that they've learned to handle it is by manipulating money. So those things are not things that a court is going to care a lot about, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have time, and it's formulaic at that point. They have certain idea about how things, and they're dealing with facts. There's a certain amount of money, they're going to divide that. In mediation, you get the ability to say, yeah, I get that we only have this much money, but this issue is really important to me. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, even just an apology, which is not something you're going to get in litigation often, can go a long way to helping people resolve issues, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to work through that.
Right. Very good. Very good. Your profession, hats off to you, because I think that it's very, very needed, and we can use it in a lot of different arenas, not necessarily just in divorce and separation. Like you said, we could use it in estates. We can use it, planning out, family matters, whatever. I mean, the work matters. I mean, the gamut is huge there of what we can use it for. So I definitely see the tremendous need, and I hope that we're going to start seeing a shift with people going for mediation more and more versus litigation and arguing, and because we're seeing more and more attorneys turning towards a mediation and using that as a tool for them. So that's great. It's absolutely great. So we're going to have to close out the show. Is there any last words that you'd like to say to our audience?
If you have any questions about mediation, obviously just feel free to reach out, blendmediation.com, and the number's on the screen. The number's also on the website, as is a bunch of other information, including podcasts, our podcast, previous issues, blogs, Blend's blogs. You can book appointments there. You can get information. There's a whole host of information. So just go to the page, reach out to us. We're very user-friendly. If you call us, we will answer you. So a person will answer you. And if we don't answer you right away, we will call you right back. And yeah, if you have questions, then let's do some research. Call us and see if we're a good fit for your issue.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And like you said, Alisa, you can practice anywhere, online. You can go, you don't have to come into the office, and you can, talk to you online. And then I guess, is there any kind of, with regards to different states and things like that, the laws, would you have to?
Yeah, so this is kind of I don't want this to become a misconception, so I should put this out there. By promoting mediation, I am in no way saying that lawyers are not essential to the process. It is important to, when you're going through any sort of crisis, to arm yourself with information. So get a good attorney, or reach out to another service. I list one on my website that is fairly reasonable and will give you legal advice. And get your legal advice so you know how to kind of structure your plan going forward. What was your question?
About, well, I was just wondering if there's, laws or anything like that about different,
Right.
If I'm in Florida and I know you're not. And so is there anything about that?
Right. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
And it may have to, I would think too, it may have to depend on what it is you're mediating, right? I mean,
Right.
if it's just a conflict in conversation or, a family matter or something like that, if it's legal, then that would be something different, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So let me say also, as part of our process, if there's a divorce matter, right? With the exception of an attorney, none of the professionals in a divorce setting are able to give legal advice. For a mediator, it would be counterproductive to give legal advice because you'd be basically advocating for one party over the other. So that can't happen in our setting. And paralegals cannot also can't give legal advice. But what they do is draft documents consistent with the court in the state where you reside, right? Mm-hmm. So I have on our website, there's a paralegal by state page. If you go there, click the state that you want to litigate in or that you need to file court documents in, you will find a paralegal associated, maybe more than one, with your state. We refer to those paralegals, and they are very reasonably priced and will draft your documents for you so you don't have to worry about the confusion of preparing them yourself. So that kind of takes care of that part of the component. And then for actual legal advice in the state, like I said, reach out to a legal professional.
Yeah, I totally understand. Well, it's really good information. And on your website, blendmediation.com, you have resources there. As you stated, you've got a tremendous amount of resources there for people to be able to look up. If you guys out there are listening and you still, have some reservations, you have some questions, then give her a call. It's 888-301-8311. And just call her, ask her, this is the situation. Can you handle it? Can you recommend something? And I'm sure you can point them into the correct direction of what needs to happen. But I really do appreciate the time you spent today. You've given us a lot of information, a lot of food for thought. And, we've all talked about a great deal about building your team through divorce. Understanding mediation, I think, is a real key. It's a very important aspect of it. And who knows, maybe your problems can get resolved without going through litigation. If you have to go through litigation, there's wonderful attorneys out there. I'm not saying anything bad about attorneys because there's a place for them. But if you don't necessarily need so much litigation or so many, so much, and maybe you can solve your problems with mediation. So we can see what happens with that. But, I know, Alisa, you and I both would like to change the face of divorce. We'd like to see couples divorce and still remain a family unit, still remain communication is a key, still be able to move forward with that. So we're hoping that maybe if we become, awareness of what tools are out there for families, that maybe, they can find the right process that works for them. So,
right.
So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you giving me the chance to share.
Yeah, absolutely.
Creating healthier humans through mediation.
Yes, we're hoping. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So again, it's Alisa Kharis. I'm pronouncing it right, Kharis. And that's Alisa. It's Alisa, and her last name is Kharis. So you can look her up. She's on Facebook. She's on, all around on social media, so you can find her. Also, founder and mediator, of the blendmediation.com, where you can find all the terrific resources. You can give her a call at 888-301-8311. Check out her podcast, which I'm sure you can find the link right on her website, which I know for a fact you can. It's Breakthrough Today, and I'm looking forward to being on her show here soon.
Cece's going to be my guest on Tuesday next week.
Yeah, Tuesday next week. So I'm excited about that. And I mean, I really do feel like the more that we can come together, build our team as we're moving forward in life, and really have positive results from it. That's where we want to go, right?
That's what it's all about. Helping
Absolutely.
each other, supporting each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, it's blendmediation.com. All the information is right there. Just go there, check it out. Check out the resources. I think that they're fantastic so that you have it available for them. So thank you very much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
You appreciate it.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Cece.
Well, gosh, guys, the time went very quickly. And again, you guys, if you want to email me, it's goingsolonetwork@gmail.com. Our radio and TV website is goingsolomedia.com. Where we have everything is goingsolonetwork.com. But we have a brand new site, and I hope you'll join me in it. It's Going Solo Community. We have wonderful people, wonderful coaches, mentors, individuals, professionals that are willing to help you move through living your best life, the life you truly want. I am Cece Shatz, the Doyenne of relationship building. You're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, and I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll catch you back here next time.